And I think the conversation that really shifted this for me, it was, I believe, earlier this year or late last year. So I want to talk about a conversation that happened on Mark Manson's old podcast. Mark has gotten a new podcast out, which is a very like a 4-hour long, crazy, in-depth podcast about topics and issues. I've never listened to it. I've never spent that much time with that. Although what I will say is for those who are kind of unfamiliar with this whole thing, and I'll get to the conversation with Arthur in a second, but Mark Manson was incredibly influential to me. He was very, very influential to me. He's largely the reason my career is the way it is, because I started a blog when I started writing on the internet back in 2019 because of Mark Manson. I started writing on the internet because of him. He got me into self-improvement. Like The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck is still one of my favorite books. It's a great book for all of those who have never read it. It's not just a cliche because it's everywhere, but it's really, really good, like genuinely very good. And he was the genesis, the birthplace of what all of this has become. This show, my books, my companies, like everything was really started when that domino of Mark Manson tipped over. And I have I really respected Mark for that a lot of ways. I'm very grateful for Mark Manson. Like if I ever saw him or got the chance to talk to him, the first thing I'd say is like, dude, like thanks for the leg up. I appreciate it, man. And Mark was really, I think, on the early end of this enlightened bro thing, but he still kind of like really fell into that old category because Mark's been in the industry a long time, even though he's kind of the most successful, I think, bridge person of the old guard and the new guard, even though Mark is rapidly showing, I think, large incongruence with where the audience currently is. And the reason I say that is because of this conversation we had with one of my favorite people right now, Arthur Brooks, so he had Arthur on the show, and for those who don't know, Arthur Brooks is the leading scholar and the leading happiness influencer in the world. Right now, he ran a think tank called the American Enterprise Institute for a while. It's a conservative think tank in D.C., focused primarily on markets and free market capitalism and all that sort of thing. And he left, and now he teaches at Harvard, and he lectures around the world. I saw him in London when he's friends with Jordan Peterson, and he's on the advisory board for the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. I saw him over there, which was great. And really, he's been probably the biggest new influencer in my orbit for a very, very long time. And this caused my respect for Mark Manson and his intellect, and Mark is a very smart person, quote unquote, to fall off a cliff when he talked with Arthur Brooks. And I think this is a microcosm on this whole conversation that we've been having surrounding truth and subjectivity in that way. And the reason I say that, and I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that to take a shot at Mark, but I say it because it was so, again, in your face of really what this thing is doing, what's really going on here. And the reason it did, to me, was because when it comes to Arthur Brooks, who is brilliant, by the way, I think Arthur is so smart. I have so much respect for his knowledge of various cultures and religious structures and everything like that and everything else. And so they got into this conversation around religion. Mark is I think, agnostic or atheist, one of the two. And Brooks is a very devout Catholic. He like literally goes to mass every single day. He's had multiple religious experiences around the world. His wife is from Spain, for example. He went to a shrine once and apparently got like a vision of kind of all this stuff, which is crazy. And so they were talking about the rise in religion in young people and he said that religious faith rising among younger people, which it has in dramatic numbers, particularly among young men, was a good thing for happiness. And Mark pushed back on that. And the reason why Mark pushed back on that is because Mark was basically saying like, well, he said this to Jordan Peterson. I'll never say he did this too. He's like, I love Jordan Peterson, but I really don't like the religious stuff. Like, I think I could push that away. And he did the same thing with Arthur, because Arthur was saying, like, you need to have a faith and a life philosophy that is surrounding you to be a happy person. And Mark pushed back, and I'm not even joking, guys. Like, what he did in response to Mark's response to that comment that he made was I think the single most polite and respectful, absolute dismantling of a person's philosophy that I've ever seen. Like, I mean, it was like it was like Mike Tyson going against Manny Pacquiao. Like, he didn't stand a chance. Like, he just beat him to a pulp and again, not in a disrespectful fashion, because Arthur seems like genuinely a very nice person, and Mark is a nice person. But it was kind of this, again, like this protection of the ego, protection of their philosophy when it's just not proving out to be true. And I think we see that with people, the amount of people returning to religious structures in general, and churches and things like that. And so he takes this kind of, really kind of infantile, like neo-spiritual argument, and he made him sound like a child, which is really interesting. Like, that was my biggest thing. It's like, he sounds like a child making this argument. Mark does, and not Arthur. Like, Arthur is like his dad telling him how it is. And which is interesting because Mark is now greater than 40 years. I think he's like 41 years old. And he's still making this kind of very lackadaisical, lazy, immature, childish, just kind of argument about religion and the truth of religion and why religion is important. And I think I don't want to make this just a religious conversation, but I think it's a broader point as well, because this is exactly what is happening across all legs of the cultural stool when you look at it. And what is that? Truth reigning supreme. That's what that is. Truth is now having a higher cultural relevancy, especially among young people, like I've mentioned throughout this entire episode, than ever before, I think. At least since the boomers back about 80 years ago, which is allowing everything, including religion, to have its day in the sun once again. And I think this kind of obsession that young people, like my friend Ethan Morales said earlier on, is the reason why is just people are they're just done with all of the fake stuff. This is why, I think this is interesting. I was listening to Emily Jashinsky on her new show. I love Emily Jashinsky. I kind of have a crush on Emily Jashinsky, by the way. But I was listening to Emily Jashinsky the other day, who is a reporter and a commentator. She just launched a show with Megyn Kelly called After Party, which has been really good. And she had Megyn on the show the other day, and then she said, I forget, she might have been talking with Alex Thompson, who is the guy that wrote the book on Joe Biden's brain turning into a milkshake with Jake Tapper. And he wrote about the cover-up and everything. And she had Alex Thompson on the show. Apparently, it might have been Alex Thompson. I had to go fact check myself after this. And she was talking about this the new commie mayor candidate in New York. And she was talking to Alex Thompson or somebody around Alex Thompson about this. And he said a really interesting point. That said, the reason why this Zoran Mamdani he's going to be the next mayor of New York City. He's going to be the next mayor of New York City. Is because the young people in New York are sick of all the boomers. They're sick of all the old people. They're sick of all the institutional people. And they're just like, we want anybody but this. And even Eric Adams, and I kind of like Eric Adams, to be honest, even though we disagree on a lot of things. Eric Adams seems like a very perfectly fine mayoral candidate to me, even though he's still not really done well with the city, I'll say that. But I think he's a good person and trying his best, at least from what I can see. But they're saying, like, nope, I don't want Andrew Cuomo. I don't want Eric Adams. I don't want, because Eric Adams is a former cop. He's NYPD. He's, pro-gun, all that kind of, I don't want that. And again, this is, I think what Emily said was that this is an indicator of this, just they're done with all the fraudulence, all the structure, et cetera, everything else, which is allowing the truth. And I think Mamdani's going to destroy that city, which will probably more than it already is, which will, hopefully bounce it back to the other side again, like California. But I think this orientation of our culture towards the truth, and including religion, having its day in the sun once again, because religion is truth, Christianity is the truth, is the sign of a maturing culture, especially among the young. And it's a culture that is coming back to the truth more than the lies they have been sold. And I think the reason why, the boomers have had such a bad rap and such trouble with this is because they are still children, largely. Like, they're the most entitled, spoiled, narcissistic generation that's maybe ever lived, just from the fact of their generation. And they still don't get it, man. Like, they still don't get it. And this, what I think this also proves is the shallowness of people who have made this self-improvement, this fraudulent space, their home, their industry, because at a certain point, you got to go deep. And in the words of Arthur Brooks, one of my favorite things he ever said, she wants your soul, man. We're talking about dating and guys and men and women. She wants your soul, man. That's what people want. They want your soul, man. And it proves the opposite of that with the shallowness of people who have made this space their home and their industry. Because at a certain point, man, you got to give me more. You got to give your audience more than just platitudes and like this and whatever. And when you can't, it all falls apart really, really, really fast. Especially when you have people like Arthur Brooks, who's just such an intellectual heavyweight, like I said, behind you, really kind of dismantling your argument, whether you wanted to do it or not. That's what happened. And you just can't, it's not sustainable. You just can't do it. And now what we're getting pushbacks on a lot of these narratives, whether that's political related, cultural related, self-help related, whatever. We're finally getting people that are pushing back and saying like, dude, I think all this is garbage. I think this is garbage. And that's exposing a lot of people. And that's why a lot of people, I believe, are tuning out old self-improvement and tuning in to what is replacing it, which is something new.